first thing this person said when they came in to see me was, I feel like I'm burning alive in paradise. That was a classic example of someone running away from themselves, thinking they can fill the hole with the outside stuff, then waking up one day and kind of going, I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not content.
Welcome to Mad Influence, a podcast about the power of influence and what happens when people choose to use it for good. I'm Helen Saul, and after a decade in marketing, I've seen how influence can be used for good, bad, and everything in between. In this series, I meet founders, campaigners, and creatives who are choosing to use their platforms to make a meaningful impact, to understand how ideas spread, create connection, and drive change. Today, I'm joined by Matt Follows. Matt spent over 15 years in the creative industries, working his way up from junior copywriter to executive creative director, before eventually pivoting into coaching and performance psychology. Today, he works with founders, creative leaders, and senior executives who operate in high-pressure environments, helping them understand how stress, trauma, and subconscious patterns can affect decision-making, performance, and leadership. He's also trained in clinical psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and a range of psychological approaches, and has worked with leadership teams across companies including Disney, National Geographic, and Toyota. His focus is on how creative people can perform at a high level without burning out, and what happens to the brain when pressure becomes the norm. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Helen. It's good to be here.
Yeah, really good to have you here. And we should probably say the reason that you're here is because a previous guest synced us up and put us up in touch, Sinead Gray from Kindred. So it's nice to have that little crossover there.
Absolutely. No, Sinead's brilliant. So very, very grateful.
Yeah, she spoke very highly of you. I thought maybe in order to help people understand a bit about what you do, because it does seem to sort of cross over at this interesting space between leadership, performance, psychology. How would you explain it to someone that's never come across a job like that before?
Good question. How would you describe what I do? It's very different for different people that I'm working with. So I think there's two types of people I tend to work with. People who want to do what they do and do what they love without it killing them, which is obviously a good thing to have. Or they want to find the next great love of their life, and then they want that to not kill them as well. So it's essentially helping them to do what they do brilliantly or do something else brilliantly in a way that's psychologically safe, but not psychologically safe and stunted. It's very important for me and very important for these people to be accelerating their ambitions and achieving bigger and better stuff in faster as well, but in a way that, as I say, is in a way that's sustainable. So I talk a lot about sustainable high performance. That's kind of what I'm all about, is how can you do it in a good way rather than do it in a bad way, not fight your biology, essentially.
Would you say that's a bit of an antidote to some of the stuff we see online that seems very sort of performance at all costs, a bit of hustle culture, that type of thing?
100%, yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I got into it, because I started in advertising at the beginning. It's kind of I did everything wrong, essentially. So I was that kind of white knuckling kind of character who wanted to win awards, get famous at whatever the penalty I'd have to pay, and I was willing to pay the cost. Unfortunately, I did pay the cost. It hit pretty hard. So because of that, and because of like real world experience, I kind of thought, well, first I had to fix myself, but then it's like, how can I help other people do it? And I found it quite frustrating that the problem that I see on a lot of the social stuff is the people who are talking about it and preaching it aren't actually trained in the stuff. They've kind of read some books, they've watched some YouTube videos, and now they call themselves a guru or an expert. And I think it's pretty dangerous, really, because they don't know what they're properly talking about, and it's a worry. So it's not cool. And I think people do start to feel guilty, going, well, if I'm not working like that, I'm not going to go and live in a condo somewhere and kind of chill out and be the best version of myself. And it's just not possible to do it that way. So yeah, I find it really frustrating.
Yeah, and you often find it'll come from people who have different lifestyles to the average person. So maybe someone who's like, earlier on in the career, maybe they don't have children, maybe they don't have all these extra businesses and things, and they think that this is something that could be applicable to everybody, and it's just not.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You could, if you're in your 20s, you can do that stuff. It's when you come into the back end of your 20s or in your early 30s, that's when everything starts catching up, because it accumulates. Do you know what I mean? It's like compound interest. It accumulates over time, and rather than getting more wealth, you get less wealth over time. So it's not a smart way to do it. And as I say, it does make people feel guilty if they're not performing like that and not doing that. And yeah, if you've got a family, if you've got kids, if you've got things outside of the day job, they're often not compatible.
Yeah, yeah. You
Mm.
mentioned a minute ago, you said that you kind of really did it wrong and that's what made you want to go into it right. Was there a specific moment where you started to feel either burnt out or you just registered like this needs to stop?
Yeah, when I ended up in hospital was probably the point. The second time I ended up in hospital was the point. The first time I didn't really learn the lesson. I didn't really take it that seriously. So yeah, so I'd work really, really hard. It's kind of, as I say, we were, when I was young, I was that person in the 20s who worked really, really hard, never went home, never took weekends off, cancelled friends, all of this kind of stuff. So I did that for such a long time. And as I say, I was fighting my biology. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just more concerned with external praise than internal happiness or fulfillment or contentment or peace or any of that kind of stuff. That kind of went out the window. And I thought I'll be happy one day in the future. So I did that, plowed on, kept going, didn't listen to my body. Then I didn't listen to the panic. Then I didn't listen to the depression that started coming in. Then I didn't listen to the addictions that started to come in to kind of escape the moment for the moment. And then eventually, it was actually on a Diet Coke shoot, and had a massive anaphylactic shock on the shoot. Was in a very, very, very bad way. Luckily, we were shooting opposite Middlesex Hospital. So Candice Chubb, who's a legend in the industry as a producer, she got me in a car, sped me across the hospital. They got me into the intensive care, shot me full of drugs and stuff. Not the good drugs. Shot me full of drugs and stuff. Pulled me back, essentially. And I came back. Doctor said, you were about 3 minutes away from a massive cardiac arrest. I was 29 years old. And I was kind of like, this is just insane. First thing I said, though, because again, I was not thinking clearly. The worse you feel, the less you feel. So I thought I felt pretty good. So I was thinking, well, obviously everything's fine. So my only worry was I was allergic to alcohol. So I was kind of like, well, can I drink alcohol after this? He was like, of course you can. And I was like, excellent. So first thing I did, got out of hospital, went to the pub. That was a Friday because I didn't want to miss a Friday night. Did that, and then back at my desk on Sunday morning. And the only reason I didn't go to my office on Saturday was because I had to move flats on Saturday. Do you know what I mean? So everything was compounding at the same time, and there was stuff going on personally as well. And yeah, it kind of all caught up with me. And I learned really, really quickly then is that you can't push your nervous system, you can't push your physiology, you can't push your brain continuously. And yeah, it was the breaking point. I had to learn from that.
Yeah. Do you think there's something there's some sort of tie-in between the creative industries and things like alcohol, drugs? I remember I went to an awards ceremony a few years ago and I was sat next to someone who doesn't drink alcohol, and they had a comedian hosting. And every other joke was about how, oh, there must be people doing coke in the toilets. And
Yeah.
I thought, I don't know, maybe times have changed a bit, but it feels kind of like this stereotype of our industry.
It is a stereotype. Whether it goes on as much, well, it doesn't go on as much now as it used to. But I mean, in the 90s, it was kind of rock and roll job, and it was a rock and roll lifestyle, and we lived like rock and roll characters. I won't deny it was absolutely fantastic times. It was absolutely hilarious. But I think that was our coping mechanism, and it's the only coping mechanism we had. So everybody was wildly ambitious. Therefore, they never really properly slept. So they needed some way to kind of stimulate themselves, but they also never really properly switched off. So you needed some way to knock yourself out. So we were on uppers and downers like all of the time. And that was our performance. That was the level of our performance psychology was basically chemistry. I think because the creative industry is so tied to the entertainment industry, and obviously the entertainment industry has a lot of this stuff knocking about in it, and because we think we are the rock stars, then we're gonna do what rock stars do, and we're gonna do what famous people do, which is get on it too much, essentially. And I think it does cause a lot of problems eventually, because again, like stress and pressure, it does compound over time, and then one day you wake up and think, one, where's my liver gone? Two, where's my brain gone? And three, where's my career gone? And probably my relationships as well. So you do see a lot of people who they lose a lot through the job. The good thing is I don't think it's the same anymore. And certainly the people I work with, yeah, they're clean. They're kind of doing it like more naturally now. And I think people are learning a bit more about what life is outside of the job. Whereas back in those days, it was all about who you are in your profession. Now I think it's about who am I as an individual, as a person who is a human being and needs to thrive, as well as just kind of like crush it essentially. So we've changed, but it's so tightly woven.
Yeah. You mentioned about how back then, obviously, it was needing to use chemicals. What are some of the healthy approaches that you will use with clients now to talk them through psychological things that they can use instead?
Using chemicals again, but using brain chemistry, not external chemicals. So, because I talk a lot about and train people a lot in how to access flow states and sustain flow states. And the good thing about flow is that when we're in states of flow, we release things like dopamine and norepinephrine and serotonin and anandamide and endorphins and stuff. These are kind of the feel good chemicals. It's kind of like the highest performing brain cocktail the brain can produce is a flow state, but it's also protects you against mental ill health as well, because you've got things like serotonin, which is obviously an antidepressant. You've got things like endorphins, which is what you get that runner's high, that rush and stuff. You got things like dopamine, which is the pursuit hormone, but rather than getting a quick fix dopamine, when people are like scrolling through TikTok and stuff, which is a low grade dopamine and actually makes you less likely to achieve things in life because you expect them to be quick. When you're in a flow state, you get like kind of you get earned dopamine. It's a slow burn dopamine. So you're getting all these things, and all these chemicals that the flow states give you is exactly the same as stuff you're getting from things like cocaine and ecstasy and all of these kind of and marijuana and stuff. It gives you that stuff. It's why you feel your best and you perform your best in a flow state. So it's still using chemicals, but it's using the kind of stuff that's safe for the body. And if you're using like artificial stimulants, like whether it's things like energy drinks or whether it's things like powders or whether it's things like liquids, that kind of stuff, one, it isn't sustainable. Two, it's a brain corrosive. So if your brain is your profession, you'd be wise not to go too heavy on the stuff that's a corrosive to your brain, essentially. So that's what I'll get people to do is how can I help them to get into a flow state so that then they can live a life that they never want to escape from. And I think that's the thing is people build a life that they desperately want to escape from, even if it's just for a moment, even if it's just for a night. And unfortunately, they do escape from their life and they start numbing out, they start kind of choking out, they start burning out, and they start kind of burning out their relationships as well at the same time. So chemistry is good, but the right kind of chemistry.
Yeah. This flow state that you're talking about, how do you help people get into a flow state?
Yeah, there's lots of ways. I mean, the big thing, a lot of the gurus will talk about the kind of things you have to add to life to increase flow. They'll talk about external flow triggers and all of this kind of stuff, it's fine, but it doesn't hold up when the pressure strikes, when stress gets intense. Those kind of external things fall off the radar and people don't do them. It's like meditation. It's like people are great. They'll have like a meditation practice when things are going well in life. But then as soon as the wheels fall off, they tend to forget those practices. It's that thing, it works so well, I stop doing it kind of thing. So if you're adding things to get into flow states, when the pressure hits, you're probably going to forget them or disregard them or think, fuck it, I'll do it. They'll just go, well, I'm not going to do that. So that's not a useful thing. So essentially what we want to get them to do is what you remove from your psychology that increases flow. So the thing that my belief is that we're actually born to flow, but we've been conditioned to fear through kind of technology, media, society in general. It's a fear-based culture. We can see that now in the way everybody is. Anxiety is at an all-time high. Fear is at an all-time high for many, many reasons. So essentially, we want to get back to the flow state, the natural baseline state, and that's removing the stuff. And that's what I talk about, subconscious bullshit elimination. That's essentially removing the subconscious stuff you're not consciously aware of that's getting in the way of the flow state. When you get rid of that stuff, then you're able to get into your natural superhuman power, essentially.
So does this tie into, I saw that you work a lot with leaders and thinking about trauma that could have influenced their leadership patterns. I'm guessing something like that is subconscious. Is that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sweeping statement, but it's sweeping because it's largely true, is the fact that a lot of high achievers, workaholics, it's actually a trauma response. It tend to be, and it was with me, it would tend to be moving away from the things that we don't want in life. And we tend to want to prove others wrong and prove the system wrong, that we're better than they say they are, or we're better than we believe we actually are. And that drives people. And the problem with that, again, because it's an away from motivation, and away from motivation will get you away from the fire, but it won't keep you running when you're out of the building. So people need to switch the away from motivation to a towards motivation, to what are they running towards? And that's what we need to do.
That's really interesting. So when you first work with a leader, do you try and do some exercises to understand what are they running away from?
Yes, exactly. But again, it's not conscious. So the way I work, because I've trained in pretty much every psychology out there to either a master's level or a trainer level or both, because I've got that. I'm not a normal coach. I'm not just about surface level tweaks and behavioral level stuff. I go much deeper into the psychology. But when I'm working with someone, they don't need to know what I'm doing. But because I'm using a lot of other stuff that is going under the radar, I can find out what's blocking someone without them really needing to know. So it doesn't feel as kind of confrontational. I've been coaching now for I think 14 years and doing psychotherapy for 20. So when I first started it and came into the industry and said, I'm going to coach people, they were massively against it. Like, people didn't want it because, one, they thought, well, it's therapy and I'm not broken. And two, especially creative people, it's like, don't fuck with the process, it's working. Do you know what I mean? People think their pain is their superpower. And I was like that. I was like, I don't want to be fixed, because if you fix the pain in my life, then I'm not going to be able to be creative anymore. I'm not going to be able to do the great stuff. And it's like, I remember Eric Clapton saying once that when he started getting stale, it would purposely blow up his life. Do you know what I mean? And if you think about it, if we grow up around that kind of mindset, that's what we believe. We believe our creativity comes from our pain, and it doesn't. Or it can for a little while.
So what if you were working with someone and that was their belief? How do you change that belief?
Basically, one, you've got to find out what the belief is, because a lot of the beliefs that are important, again, this is why it's not like normal coaching. A lot of the beliefs that are important, someone can't identify on a sheet of paper. Like, some people will write down a list of limiting beliefs and go, pick one which you'll most resonate with. Well, straight away you go, well, you're not trained in psychology, because that's not how the brain works, and that's not how the unconscious mind works. It's like, the most deeply held beliefs, the ones that are the biggest drivers of our behavior, are the ones that are deeply unconscious. They're deeply unconscious because our brain doesn't want us to change them, because it thinks it's keeping us safe. So the first thing is to get people into a state, essentially a theta state, like an everyday, as far as they're aware, they're kind of like fully normally conscious, but I'm obviously spotting other stuff and going underneath that. So one, find out what the belief is, because then once you know what the belief is, then you can start challenging and systematically breaking the belief down with counter indications. Or essentially what you do is that you find out what the belief is that's holding someone back, or the unconscious value, or whatever it is, or a worldview or whatever. You get that up, you find where that is, and then you help them to find where the conflict is. So you see, every belief that we have is just a decision that we made that we've stopped questioning. And that's why we get stuck in it. It's just a decision. No belief is true or false. It's just a decision, and we stop questioning it, and then it becomes a conviction. So if I can find out what that stuff is, make them consciously aware of the conflict that exists unconsciously. They go, well, I can't be up and down at the same time, or I can't be free and secure at the same time, or I can't be the best but also at home, but also be the best here. Once you can see that, you get that aha moment, and things start collapsing inside. All the barriers start falling down, essentially.
Yeah. Are there common beliefs that you see cropping up time and time again with these high performing individuals in particular?
Yeah, and it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. A lot of the times, as I say, people are moving away from something they heard about themselves that they don't want to believe. This is why people have kind of roller coaster lives, when they kind of go up and down, like emotionally or performance wise. Is that, say you've got a belief, I'm not good enough, and it's down kind of here. And then what you do, you work really hard to go, I am good enough, I am good enough, I am good enough, I am good enough. But then you get so far away from the belief, you get essentially, you create too much tension. There's a contradiction there, and the brain doesn't like that because that feels unsafe. So then it starts, you sabotage, you go back down, 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 down. You step off the gas till you get close enough to be, I'm not good enough. And then you go, shit, but I am good enough. And then you start powering up again. So you get too far away. And then you get that conflict again. The brain goes, well, we don't like this because we believe we're not good enough. And now you're saying we are good enough. So again, it's you sabotage and you come back down again. And until you remove that belief, people believe they are enough. In fact, they're better than enough. Then they'll keep roller coasting. And that's kind of what happened. That's what happened to me all the time. It was like I was always ironically trying to prove people at school wrong, teachers or friends or non-friends. It was all about driven to be famous, to be seen, to be on the TV, so that people would finally see, yeah, he is good enough. In fact, he's better than you. So it was driven by a really negative kind of force, essentially. When you see that, then you can see why I ended up in hospital. It's kind of like if you're driven by that dark force, it's gonna take you somewhere you don't want to go eventually.
In terms of the specific desire to be famous, to be seen, to be on TV, how did that practically manifest itself in your life?
An obsession. I was obsessed with it. My entire life was that. You see, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be Slash. Do you know what I mean? I remember Appetite for Destruction came out, and I was in a band practice with my band. We all said, "Yeah, I reckon we're better than this." so, so we thought we were going to be better than Guns N' Roses, and we were going to be at Wembley and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't get that. But I never lost that desire to be famous, essentially. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be on TV. And then what happened was I went to art school. I kind of stopped the band because I realized I wasn't going to be Slash. Didn't know what I was going to do at art. But one of my lecturers says, you do realize, Matt, if you become an artist, it's highly unlikely to become rich. And you'll probably stay in the town you live in forever. I was like, well, I need to be rich. I have to get out. So he says, well, you should get into advertising, because he said he'd been in advertising when he was younger. And he said that they have massive Christmas bonuses and you become really rich really fast. So I believe that. And and then I started watching TV ads and stuff. And I started walking to the train station. I'd see all the billboards in those days, it was Silk Cut and Benson Hedges, all really cool posters. And I thought, I want to do that, because if I do that, then all of my mates who are walking to this train station will have to see that Matt did that, not me realizing you don't have your name on that stuff. And it drove everything. And from that point on, it was an obsession. And I would do anything to get it as well. That's the thing. And I would give up anything to get it as well. So
does that affect and impact personal relationships too?
Massively, every relationship. Because what happens is you kind of separate yourself from everything that you used to be to a degree that you forget who you used to be. And that's really, really dangerous. And you become this kind of shell of a person who hasn't got those nurturing connections. And it's kind of like this kind of three things you need to kind of balance up in your life, which is energy, work, and love. If you don't have energy, you're not going to be good at work. You're not going to be good in love. But if you just have work, and you haven't got love, then your energy is going to drop. And if vice versa, if you just got love, but you're not really working, your energy is going to drop because you'll probably be skint. So it's kind of like you need to balance these things out. And I didn't balance those things out. And then I learned to balance those things out.
I'm very interested in how you learned, because talking about everything today, you come from such a reflective perspective. You're able to openly talk about topics that a lot of people, I think, would keep hidden. Maybe if they'd been motivated by fame or being seen or feeling not enough, I think a lot of people would keep that inside. And yet you're very calmly able to explain that, reflect on what you were and what you wanted to change. So how did you get to that point? Is it through the study of all these psychological practices? Is it something else?
I'm an open person anyway, so it's kind of like take it or leave it kind of thing. I'm wired like that. But the big thing is you can't change until you fully accept who you actually are and own that, and then go, okay, well, that's who I am. That's what I'm driven by. It's what I believe in. Is that in alignment with or fighting against who I wish to be? So you got to do that first step, and then you kind of decide who you want to be. And then when you become that person, you still have ownership of who you were and where you've come from. So by learning all the psychology, and like I had a career, so I was making lots of money and all that kind of stuff and winning awards. And I just quit all that and went back to studying. I went to King's College and studied clinical psychotherapy and clinical hypnotherapy. So I kind of completely and utterly went back to ground zero, essentially. And from doing that and from learning that and kind of like losing everything I'd gained, I kind of had to be really honest and open with myself, because there's no way I could have rebuilt myself if I wasn't. And now, because I do so much stuff on social media and I'm kind of pretty outspoken with it, I'm so used to talking about it. It doesn't bother me. It's kind of like, yeah, the stuff I've come from is what's made me who I am, but it's also what helps me to help other people to get to where they want to become, because then they feel comfortable talking about the stuff that's not working at the moment inside of them as well.
Yeah. When you first quit the industry you were in and you decided to study instead, did you experience any kind of identity loss?
Huge. Yeah, it was a complete ego collapse. But the thing that the good thing was is that I'd already lost myself anyway. That's what caused so much pain. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know the you beneath the me. That old identity of mine was no longer fit for purpose. It started crumbling around me. The new identity wasn't fully formed yet, and I didn't even know who I wanted to be. So yeah, it was a complete identity stuff. And what happens is that you have your confidence comes from your environment if you don't do it correctly. And as soon as you take the environment away, your confidence collapses and your certainty collapses. It's what's happening at the moment. People are losing jobs all over the place at the moment. The thing that's the most worrying is the ego collapse, the identity collapse, because it's tied to their environment. And when they're no longer in that environment, they've not got the confidence and the courage and stuff. Then they start dropping back to that kind of bullshit, as I'd say, the subconscious stuff. I am not good enough. See, I told you I wasn't good enough. Then they start doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing, that's making them feel worse and perform worse, essentially.
Yeah, it's very true what you say about like the link between people losing their jobs as well, and it makes me think back to a few years ago. I was made redundant and I lost my job, and I remember I went to a wedding and I was at a table of people that I didn't know, and someone on the table said, "Oh, I've got a good idea for a game. Why don't we all play Guess the Job?"
Ouch, yeah.
And I didn't have a job, and I actually felt fine about it, but I felt more embarrassed for everybody else that it was going to be this awkward moment. And it just really made me reflect in that time that society ties so much value into you as a person and the link to the job that you have. And I just think it's one part of you, but there's so much more than that. And I do
Yeah.
think it's a real shame that it becomes the only icebreaker, what you do,
Yes.
because there is a lot more to us than that.
There's a great story about a journalist goes to see a monk, very famous monk, and the journalist goes to the monk and says, "What's the biggest problem facing humankind right now?" And the monk looks at the journalist and goes, "Who are you?" And she says, "I'm a journalist." Because I didn't ask what you did. I said, "Who are you?" And she goes, "I'm Sarah." And he goes, "I didn't ask what your name is. I said, who are you?" And she went, I'm a woman." And he goes, "I didn't ask what sex you were. I said, who are you?" And she went, "Gosh," she goes, "I don't know. I'm a human being." He goes, "I didn't ask what species you are. I said, who are you?" And she thought about it. She goes, "I have no idea." And the monk said, "Exactly. That is the greatest pain and frustration and problem facing humankind right now."
Yeah. Why do you think so many people tie their value into work above all else?
Because, well, a few different reasons. One, we're kind of conditioned to do that from school. Not who do you want to be when you grow up, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we're young and we kind of, again, because we're very, very suggestible, hypnotizable, whatever you want to call it, at a young age, from 0 to 7, pretty much those ages. And anything that people tell us becomes the gospel truth that goes on what I'd call our blueprint of life and our unconscious mind. That's the way things are. We're trained to think, what do you want to be, not who do you want to be? That's a big one. And then you've got the other side, which is kind of like when I spoke about workaholism, is like a kind of trauma response. A lot of the times we don't want to look into who we are because we're terrified of who we might be. Not because we're terrified that we're a bad person, but we're actually, the real thing is we're terrified of the magnificent, amazing stuff we could achieve if we just let ourselves go for it. And that terrifies us and we bury that. And then we throw that into an external thing called work. And we go, and then we start kind of conditioning ourselves to be, all I am is what I do. And then people say, "You're so good at doing this X thing." Do you know what I mean? Mine was always, "You're great creative," and all of this kind of stuff. Or you're great creative director, or whatever it is. They didn't say you're a good person. Do you know what I mean? So, and we're all trained to do exactly the same thing. So we're all compounding each other's anxieties. Like I say about our industry, the creative industry and the entertainment industry is full of insecure overachievers. We're insecure about who we are, what we bring to the world, and we're massive overachievers because we don't want to look into that too much. We're afraid to stare into the shadows, into the darkness, and that keeps us locked in the external thing. So I'd advise people to figure out who are you, not what do you do.
Yeah. Being armed with all this knowledge that you have, does it allow you, when you see people in the industry maybe performing in strange ways, does it allow you to give them a bit more grace than maybe the average person might, because you see them behaving in a weird way and you think maybe there's a reason for that?
Yes, 100%. I never go into any situation judging someone or assuming anything. It's always that thing. Everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have available at the time. I mean, I don't believe there's bad people. I mean, I think there's bad behaviors, but I don't think there are bad people. They're just doing what they think is the right thing at that time with what they know currently. So I'll always look at someone from that perspective and kind of go, look, it's only because you don't know any better. But hopefully, if we can have a chat, then I can show you and point you in the direction to how you can work this better. I believe that you can't have high performance and high fulfillment or high satisfaction or high peace. I believe that peace and performance were opposite ends of the scale. I didn't realize they could be collapsed into one thing. And you can, and when you have that peace inside of you, then your performance literally skyrockets. You can do more than you ever believed possible. Like I do more now than I did when I worked in advertising, because I coach, I train, I do workshops, I do masterminds, I do groups, all that kind of stuff. But I don't burn myself out now. One, because it's meaningful to me, really deeply meaningful to me. I love doing it. Two, I love the people I work with. Three, I know where I'm coming from. I know who I am.
Yeah. I was just going to ask about the process of it all, and I'm wondering if you've got any specific examples, the outcomes or the person that they become after they've worked with you.
Who do they got? I mean, so many hundreds and hundreds of people. So what would be the commonality is they fall back in love with what they do because they're back in love with who they are. I think that's probably the best thing that happens. It's kind of like the undercurrent of it is that they actually rediscover why they did the thing they do, or rediscover why they want to do the new thing that they want to do, and then they become good at that. So I think that's the thing. It's two things. The external gets better, but the internal gets better. They're not at war with themselves anymore. They're not fighting their own brain, not battling their own self. And once you take the friction out, then you can get into that flow again. It's, as I say, it's that live a life in flow that you never want to escape from, because you're the person you never want to escape from, essentially.
Yeah. When you're doing this deep work, do you ever get unexpected outcomes? For example, someone coming for support with the role that they're in and then discovering that actually maybe they shouldn't be in that industry altogether.
Yeah, and it can happen quite a lot. It's kind of a big word, but it's enlightenment. So suddenly you kind of go, that's why I was suffering. That's why I'm in pain. That's why I was struggling. That's why I plateaued. I think I need to do this thing instead. But because they're more in alignment with that new thing, they're able to get that up and running much, much quicker. So I had to get a whole new career up and running from scratch without knowing a single. I knew psychology from a marketing, advertising perspective, but I didn't know it from a performance perspective. So I had to rebuild my identity and rebuild my business and career from the ground up, and it took a while. But because I've been there, because I've done it for so many years now with so many different people, I know how to accelerate that process really, really rapidly. So that's what we can get to. We can get to essentially what you want to do. You want to close the gap from who you're currently being and who you're capable of being. And when you close that gap, that's when you start actually living a full blast life, essentially. Because between who you're currently being and who you're capable of being, don't forget your unconscious mind knows who you're capable of being. Even if you don't want to consciously think about that, it knows. This is why we have low self-esteem. If you're not doing stuff in alignment with your better self, you lose self-esteem points. Your reputation with yourself drops down. But when you do things that are in alignment with your optimal self, then your self-esteem goes up because your reputation with yourself goes up. Yeah, you do what you say you will do. You are the person you say you are. Between that gap is where all the frustration, the self-doubt, the anger, the rage, the depression, all of that kind of stuff lives in the gap between those two characters that you have. When we close the gap, that's when we can kind of like fully lean into what we're doing. And that can happen really, really quickly, much quicker than people believe, because the unconscious mind works so quickly. If you think someone can be traumatized in a split second, they can, one, be living the best life ever. Something can happen that lasts a millisecond, and then they are living the worst hell ever. It's like, I remember I was working with a client who was, say, very, very rich, like owned a super yacht. And the first thing this person said when they came in to see me was, I feel like I'm burning alive in paradise. That was a classic example of someone running away from themselves, thinking they can fill the hole with the outside stuff, with the money, the wealth, the yachts, the helicopters, all of that kind of stuff. Then waking up one day and kind of going, shit, I've run out of road. I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not at peace. There's nothing else I can get in my life. And then they have the wake up call. So I can help people get to that space much, much quicker. Or if they've got to that high level and then have lost themselves and don't feel it anymore, I can help them to close the gaps. They can get the next thing, essentially.
The client that said, I'm burning alive in paradise.
I'll never forget it, yeah.
Did you manage to help them get out of that?
Yes, absolutely. So essentially what happens is everything we're looking for in the outside world is what we're missing inside. Yeah. This person wanted love and adoration. So their conditioning was, well, love and adoration is be rich, have things that everybody else in the world doesn't have, and then everyone will love and admire you. But the problem is, it had all of that stuff, but inside they didn't have love and admiration for themselves. This person did not like themselves. And the weird thing was the further they kind of moved away from who they truly were and became this other person, you have to be someone else in order to get something you never had before. The further they got away with it, the less they loved and admired themselves. In fact, they disrespected themselves a lot. And they disrespected themselves, and that's when the addictions came in. But again, this person didn't know this consciously. They were going, I did everything right. I did everything textbook. It's like, you did everything textbook according to TikTok. If anything you're looking for in the outside world that you're thinking external stuff will fill, ask yourself, where is that missing inside of me? Where don't I love myself? Where don't I respect myself? Where don't I value myself?
You just referenced TikTok then, and you earlier mentioned as well, people sort of trying to give the message that you do, but without being qualified for it. Is this something that frustrates you?
Yeah, it does, because this stuff's much more complicated. And what tends to happen is people think they'll watch this stuff, they'll either do those things and it won't work, or they won't do those things and get more and more frustrated and more believing, well, I'm not good enough then, because this person has this amazing lifestyle. And look at them, they're a multi-billionaire at or 25 or whatever. Well, I'm clearly fucking up my life. But the reality is that these people don't know what they're doing. And a lot of the time it's a smoke screen anyway. Like I live in a really nice part of the world, somewhere kind of where a lot of people, influencers, live, and they kind of take a lot of selfies and stuff. And the amount of time I see people posing on this selfie thing, and it's beautiful background, it's got palm trees and blue sky and all that kind of stuff. They're in front of the motorway. It's kind of like, it's bullshit. And I think that's really dangerous. So yes, it doesn't keep me awake at night, but it does frustrate me. A lot of these people, a lot of coaches, that, to be fair, do you know what I mean? They'll say, I'm going to help you fix your life. It's kind of like, well, what's your qualification? Well, I've lived it, man. It's kind of like, you do realize every single human being is different, right? So
yeah,
be wise who you pick.
This makes me think about something that I've been curious about for a while. I'd love to get your take on it. So you've talked about how you can actually get people quicker results than they expect. And we've just talked about people with messages that maybe they're not qualified for. Something that I've noticed for years now with podcasters and, social media personalities that are not qualified, their only qualification is, like me, they are interviewing other people, but they don't have personal backgrounds in this stuff. A theme that they love to repeat is, you need to go away and do the work on yourself by yourself, and it's going to take you a really, really long time, many years. And until you do this, like, you can't be self-actualized, you can't have relationships. And sometimes I find it to be a message that just doesn't resonate with the average person, because it kind of suggests that you need to spend your whole life working on yourself. And it doesn't allow for the fact that everyday normal people, actually, we've got to get on with our lives and be doing stuff and not just purely focusing on that.
Yeah.
Curious to hear your take on it. You might have a different view.
No, I have the same. You say, so the longer people stay in pain, the more money they make. And that goes with a lot of therapists as well. So it's not just influences. It's kind of like, if I keep you, if I fix you fast, my money dries up. I've got to find someone else. So a lot of it is driven, whether that's conscious or unconscious, a lot of it is driven by, I need to make a living, so let's do that. Two, the belief is that change takes time. Like I was saying before, is like, we can be traumatized in a split second. That's how fast our unconscious mind can work. It can de-traumatize you in a split second as well, when it's in the right state. Do you know what I mean? The trauma happens because we're in a certain psychological state. Yeah, we're in a hypnotizable state, a highly programmable state, a theta state, essentially. If you want to talk from a more of a kind of brain science perspective, we're in theta. We're in that state, wide open unconsciously. But if we can get back in that state, we can unwire the trauma really rapidly as well. So it's and then if you get people like coaches or therapists who say it takes forever, yeah, one, they're probably looking for money. Two, they're not trained right. And three, most people don't realize it. And here's the thing, is that most people will be slow to help people change because their belief is change is slow and painful. And if your belief is change is slow and painful, you're going to unconsciously project that into your client or your audience, and they're going to believe that too. But if I go in there and my belief with 100%, I know for a fact because I've done it for so many years, is that I want to get you living the life you want to live, so you don't have to be around me much longer, really quickly. Unless it's something really, really, really deep, or sometimes I work with clients for years, because what happens, it's kind of new level, new devil. It's kind of like, as they're increasing and changing their career and stuff and growing up the ladder and all of those kind of things, they have different challenges, different things that hit them. They have to evolve again as a different identity. Every time you get a new level, you first need to change the identity to reach the level. You have to become the goal, not chase the goal. So that can take a longer time if someone chooses to keep growing. But for something like we're talking about, say someone who's got trauma or whatever, or someone's depressed or has an obsession or an addiction, I don't want to overpromise because I'm not legally allowed to, but to speak to people I've worked with, it's kind of like it can happen really, really rapidly, if you're talking to the right part of the brain.
Yeah. I'm guessing that there's a big overlap in what you do between the personal and the work. Are there any boundaries that you need to set with clients around this, or do you just see it as two things that naturally integrate and it's not a problem?
So if I was a pure play therapist, I'd have to say to someone, this is the boundary, this is the scope we're working in. And if I was just a coach, I'd have to say, I can work on the behavioral stuff. If we get into deeper stuff or anything that's more psychological, I have to refer you on. So if I was that, then I would do. The difference is that I'm very, very open in any of the social stuff or on my website about, this is how I work, this is how we're going to work. So I don't need to set, I've pre-framed that in my content, I pre-framed that on the website. Then when I'm talking to someone, I will say, what we need to understand is that who you are as a human being and who you are as a work person are not separate. Yeah. If your work suffers, personally you'll suffer. If personally you suffer, and your work will suffer. So it's a two thing. And sometimes we need to propel someone forwards, which is kind of more kind of, I guess, traditional coaching stuff. Sometimes we'll propel them forwards and they'll hit a brick wall or they'll hit a pain point. Then we have to kind of do some of the more psychological background stuff to remove whatever's blocking them. But I would kind of like, I pre-frame it in my content. That's why I do so much content. One, I want to help people who can't afford this anyway. Two, I want to counter the misinformation as much as I possibly can and rub some people at the wrong way because I find that funny because I'm a creative. So I kind of find it funny to do that. And three, it's kind of like to pre-frame the way I work.
Yeah. We are coming towards the end now. Usually I like to end on the same question for everybody. And the question is there either a person or a moment that has influenced who you are today? And no pressure on this, but I'm pretty sure when I asked Sinead this question, it ended up with her talking about you. And that's why you're on this podcast today. But yeah, it can be any point in your life that we've not already covered that you feel was a real turning point.
Could I have two?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I see my life in two phases. So it was in advertising, then around advertising after.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was Dave Morris, my lecturer at Bucks College, who massively prepared me for an industry and got me to see the person inside of me I didn't know existed. So if Dave ever watches this, thank you, mate. You literally changed my life in many, many ways. So thank you. So Dave Morris is one of them, the first one, obviously outside of family and stuff. And the second one would be Tom Mackay, who was my first NLP trainer or master trainer. God, it must have been 20 odd years ago, who was the person who showed me a different path and showed me another side of myself I didn't know existed. And he's an amazing legend as well. And he also got me over a cat allergy as well, which was pretty impressive.
Through how?
Through hypnosis. He used hypnosis on that one.
Wow.
It was bomb. I had a lifelong cat allergy up until that point. And literally I had an allergy to cats. Literally I was in hives, asthma kind of thing, eyes swelling, all of that kind of stuff. Couldn't go to my girlfriend at the time, she's not my wife now, but couldn't go to my girlfriend's house because they had cats. She couldn't go in the house. But then one day I did this NLP thing, and then we were at dinner or lunch, whatever, at the table, and I was eating everything, and then my girlfriend's mum goes, God. I went, what? Because Fifi's been under the table all of this time. I looked down, there's a massive furry cat by my feet. Must have been there for about an hour and a half, literally zero reaction whatsoever. So I was like, wow, I'm sold.
Wow. So how does that work from a scientific perspective?
Yeah, so basically an allergy is a phobia of your immune system. So essentially what happens is your immune system thinks that thing outside of it that's not a threat is a threat. It mistakes that as a threat. So it's a phobia, essentially. You can collapse a phobia in minutes when you know how to do it. So if someone's got a lifelong phobia or something, it can be collapsed it's really, really rapid.
That's absolutely fascinating. I had no idea. I've seen the phobia thing in practice. My sister has an extreme fear of spiders. So we went to a course together at London Zoo. I was just like the moral support.
Love it.
And part of it includes hypnotherapy.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people in the room were extremely, extremely scared. And by the end of it, they were holding tarantulas, and I just couldn't get over the progress. But I had no idea that could be applied to an allergy. That's so interesting. Yeah.
And what I'd say, if anyone's watching this, unless you're very heavily trained in allergies, like if it's someone who goes, well, I did like 7 days and then a hypnotherapy diploma, do not do it because you could trigger something. But yes, if you're trained to do it and you know what you're doing, then yes, it's pretty rapid.
The mind is such a fascinating thing, I think, and how it links also to the body as well.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be ending on such a curious fact that I've learned today. Good to learn something new in the morning.
There you go.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having us, Helen.
Enjoyed and found this whole conversation super interesting.
Likewise, and thank you for having me, and thank you for asking me the questions. Really cool.
You're so welcome. If people want to find you, where would you like me to send them?
All the places I've slagged off. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. Very big. I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Or mattfollows.com is my website, and you can sign up to my newsletter there, and there's loads of free stuff there as well. But yeah, I'm everywhere I can be.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you for listening to Mad Influence. This is the part of the episode where podcasters tend to ask you to subscribe and most people don't bother, but I would really appreciate it if you could do, because it sends a signal to the platforms to say that the content is good, more people get to see it, and we get to grow the podcast and invite more guests on in the future. So if you could press follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to or watching this podcast, I would really appreciate it.